explanation for why it was there other than, I thought it looked cool. But if you could pull that statement off without flinching, you'd definitely be cool. An arbiter of good graphic design instead of musical taste, but cool. There was no way I was that cool. My sister Helen twirled into our room, a bouncy ball of exuberance dressed in our school uniform. Last year, the gray, black, and red plaid skirt she was wearing had been mine, and would be again in about a week. But our dad had recently started his new job as a corporate attorney after years of working for nonprofits, and he'd forgotten about our back-to-school shopping until the very last Saturday before school started. Unfortunately for Helen, the store that sold our school's uniform was out of tall girl sizes, so she was borrowing one of my spares until her special order arrived. On me, the skirt had hit an extra awful spot just below my knee and turned my calves into tree trunks. On Helen, it was the primary ingredient in an instant, sexy Catholic schoolgirl formula. Evidence of what 7 inches of extra height will do for a girl. She pranced in front of me. "Hey, Athena, how do I look?" Like jailbait, I wanted to say, and might have said as recently as last week. But I stopped myself with a reminder that it wasn't Helen's fault that she got all the height in our family, and I was stuck at a measly 5'3". "It's a little short," I said as diplomatically as possible. "You're a little short," she said, narrowing her eyes at me. She turned back to our full-length mirror and fussed with the white Oxford shirt that completed our uniform, pulling it out so it bunched against the skirt's waistband, creating a giant shirt, tiny waist juxtaposition. She struck a pose that mimicked Claudia Schiffer on the cover of the Vogue magazine sitting on her bed. The special fall fashion edition seemed to be about 90% ads, and was so huge it was currently making a significant indentation on Helen's fluffy comforter. I didn't mean it as an insult. I shrugged an apology at her reflection. She looked back at me with a quick glance of her wide-set blue eyes, then went back to making serious faces at herself in the mirror. Last year, half the girls in my homeroom got sent to Sister Catherine's office in the first week for skirts that were too short for the dress code. So you might want to have Dad write a note about your skirt being on order. She turned to look at me, her face wrinkled up in annoyance. "You're such a goody-good." Her eyes lit up when she saw the band buttons on my bed. "Hey, can I have that Pearl Jam button?" Her hand hovered in the air, ready to snatch it from the pile. I eyed her suspiciously. It wasn't that Helen didn't like Pearl Jam. She had a crush on the band's singer, Eddie Vedder, that teetered on obsession. But there was no way she'd wear the pin in public, let alone put it on her backpack. It just wasn't her. She was too organized for the casually arranged, haphazardly cool collection I was aiming for. She had already labeled her new school binders, all black, red, and white, our school colors, with the titles of her classes, complete with classroom number and teacher's name, in her neat handwriting with the silver paint pen. Even her interest in fashion was methodical, with her magazines, books, and scrapbooks full of clippings carefully lined up on her bookshelf. "Why do you want it?" I edged the Pearl Jam button closer to my jewelry box. "You don't like them anymore," she said. "And I do. God, you don't have to be so mean." I wasn't being mean, just guarded. Helen was always taking things from me when I was done with them, sometimes before. And like the uniform skirt, it usually looked better on her than it did on me. I almost always felt like the prototype version of the Graves sisters' operating system, with everything that was average about me physically turning into something unfairly exquisite with Helen. It wasn't just her height, either. She got the cheekbones of my dreams, a version of my nose without the bump I'd acquired in a fall from a playground balance beam, and straight, wheat blonde hair that defied the Louisiana humidity, unlike my own dirty blonde waves, now dyed a fiery red, which turned frizzy approximately 363 days of the year. Our eyes were the only feature where we were about on an even playing ground, and that they were essentially the same size and shape. In terms of their color, I sometimes thought I'd eked out a small victory, and that my eyes were a more interesting blue-green to her blue ones. I handed the pin to her anyway. At the end of the day, that pin deserved to find a home with someone who loved Pearl Jam.